Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our never-ending stream of streams. My name is Anthony John Agnello, streams producer at Engadget.com, and we are continuing our E3 2015 coverage. And this morning, they are probably the nicest people in the world because they agreed it is 9:30 a.m. in Los Angeles, and E3 week, you need to understand how little sleep anybody has had at this point. And Epic Games was gracious enough to come on and talk about their wonderful game, Fortnite, with me. Right now we have Tanya, the executive producer from Fortnite, who is hanging out with us right now. Hello, Tanya. How are you this morning?
Hello, I'm great. Actually, since I have a daughter now, so I go to bed at a totally reasonable hour compared to E3s of the past. So it's not so bad for me.
Well, how is your show going right now? How has Epic Games E3 been unfolding? Because this is actually kind of momentous. You know, for the past few years, Fortnite has been a wonderful promise for the future. But now Fortnite is very, very close to actually being out in the ether. How have people been responding to the game?
Yeah, well, it's been really great just to get people in and playing because we are doing so much it's hard to explain without actually seeing, but we are doing so much different stuff in this game that it's just great to get people in and playing it and getting their feedback. And the response so far it's been fantastic. And the team and I, we just cannot wait to get this into people's hands for our closed beta this fall.
So, Tanya, I have to tell you, it's very hard. And we're actually watching, right now on the stream, we're watching a little piece of Fortnite right now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I am not playing it, but I did get a chance to play it at a pre-E3 event in May.
Yeah.
And, prior to playing Fortnite, you guys have a very real challenge because I think it's very, very difficult for people to understand what this game feels like when
Hmm.
they haven't touched it. There
Yeah.
is a lot to get your mind around. And
Yeah.
I personally, like, when I started playing it, I was like, whoa, what is even happening? I was even more confused when I started playing. So tell me how have you guys sort of approached designing Fortnite around bringing people in? You know, you have all of these layers of mechanics here. You have your island that you're building up. You have unfolding the campaign world and where to get missions. You have the actual act of building in a mission. How do you make sure that people know what this game is?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question, and like our step number one, and you can probably feel this, right? It's like step number one for us was how do we make the core of the game, which is all about action building, exploration with your friends and these procedurally generated worlds, feel really, really good. And that was like the first thing that we focused on and decided, to make really great. And when we got it there, the next step for us was we wanted to build a game that had like hundreds of hours of gameplay.
Mm.
And I mean, really something foundationally that we could build on for years and years. And when you're trying, when you're doing something like that, you need to get all of those systems. They need to be deep, right? They need to have lots of layers, and people need to be able to understand how they all work together. And we have to make that really, really good and clear for folks, right?
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of work. I mean, even in the last year, you talked a bit about like the mission, how you get your missions and you go into the world map and all that. Even in the last 3 months, we've ripped that out even from the build that you saw previously.
Wow.
Yeah, because we saw like those systems just weren't gelling in the way that we wanted them to. And even in the way that people get into the game, we took it out and we're in the process right now. We're going to relaunch our next online test and see how people like the new system. Like we're just being very, analytical and saying like, okay, if it doesn't work, let's try something else. The most important thing is that we're building that foundation that we can really grow over the years.
So I am curious. Why has it taken Fortnite so long to get to a point where you're even ready for this beta this fall? Why?
Yeah, well,
What? For 4 years from announcement to being playable in the public, that wasn't unheard of, back in the day.
yeah.
That wasn't unheard of back when. But when you announce a game and you're going to put out in front of people, especially something free to play in the vein of Fortnite, where it's a game that is going to change dramatically, even when it's out there, in the public, you guys are going to continue to tweak it. Why has it taken so long to get to this point?
Well, I guess the first thing is that we really announced it too early. I mean, kind of just being totally straightforward. Like when we first announced it, we thought that we had a game that was much smaller, that was going to be something a bit different. The core of the game hasn't strayed at all. It's been the same from the early days. But once we realized that we wanted to build this like really solid framework that I was kind of talking about, where you and your friends are rebuilding this world together and we're giving you all of the tools at your disposal, whether that's new building pieces or new environments or new places in the world you can go see, or new game modes like our PvP mode, which is insane. It quickly shifted from this small, like little core game experience to one where we said, man, we think this really has legs and this could be something really, really cool. And we went out too early, and that was unfortunate for us. And then along the way, we're publishing this game ourselves, and this is the first time we've done that as well. So building, I mean, those are a lot of pieces that you're building kind of all at once and for the
Right.
first time. And it's been great because it's not enough that the game is really great. Like even from the point that you get into our launcher and download the game, and if you need to talk to customer service, or you're in another country, and all of that stuff, it needs to be great. It needs to be great. So we've been working on all that.
Tanya, tell me a little bit more about that sort of early conception of
Yeah.
Fortnite. So like back in 2011, when there's that very, sort of big splashy announcement, and even then, this was going to be published by you guys. This was going to be like your first self-published game, even then, correct?
Yes.
So,
Well,
no?
I mean, we've gone back and forth on it. We were at the time we were still kind of trying to decide what we wanted to do. But it really officially became a game we were going to self-publish, a few years back.
So what was Fortnite going to be when it was initially announced?
Fortnite was going to be, I mean, the core of it, the same, an action survival building game. Like, really, it's so funny. Even when I look back at my old, we put together these PowerPoint presentations, like, the concept of the game, and just a few weeks ago, I was digging back into what 2011 looked like. And I was like, man, it's amazing that the core has stayed so true. And I think that kind of speaks to the ideas and the people who had a really focused kind of vision of what it is that we wanted to build. But when the idea came about, we were saying things like, man, we want to build an emergent game. We want to build a game that lives, where we want to see what people do with it, right? We don't necessarily want to build just that linear game experience. Like, we want people to take our stuff and do things with it that we would have never imagined. And at the same time, we were talking about, how can we get different types of players to play together? And this was like my big thing a few years back is, I've got all these friends and people around me that play only one kind of game. Like, oh, I'm a shooter player, right? Like, I'm waiting for Call of Duty, I'm waiting for Gears, I'm waiting for you name it. But then when I would get into an MMO and try to get them to play it with me, they'd be like, no. I don't play those games.
I don't do that.
I know, and the other way around as well, right? Like, I would play, MMOs, and then the next shooting game would come out. They'd like, let's go play Battlefield or whatever, right? And they'd be like, no, I don't play those kinds of games. And so we were talking a lot about how could we make a game that really allowed these different types of people to play together. And that in the early days of Fortnite, we were conceptualizing, what kind of game does the shooter player want to play? What kind of game does like a support player want to play? What kind of game does the person who loves movement and they love like exploring new environments and like being kind of like the social hub of the group? What kind of game do they want to play? And around our core system of scavenge, build, defend, we were able to create these different classes where all the time we get people in our online tests are like, I never I never like action games, or I never like shooting games, or I never like RPGs. But oh my God, I felt like I love Fortnite. There was a thing there for me to do.
Mm.
And so that was really in the early days and the inception of the game.
Well, Tanya, like, what concerns do you guys have of once this game is out there and, beyond the beta, once Fortnite is a finished game, what concerns do you guys have about having something that almost feels like it's a jack of all trades but a master of none? It really did strike me when I played Fortnite that it did feel like a game that was trying to address every conceivable audience that you could possibly have. You do have those shooter elements for people that like shooters, but you also have all of these crafting elements to bring in people that don't like shooters, and you have this robust way to play by yourself for people that don't like MMOs. But it seems, like it would be very, very difficult to make sure that you're satisfying all of those different audiences if they do like those things. Like, how are you making sure that Fortnite is still something that, a specialist, something with a very specific gaming interest, wants to play, rather
Yeah.
than something that is all things to all people?
Well, the core of the game is the action building. And
Mm.
that's what we've built everything around. And so regardless of the type of player you are, it all serves that purpose of exploring my environment, figuring out what I want to do, building my fort, whether that's creatively or whether that's just for, defense purposes, and then defending it against the creatures. And the archetypes really play in how you want to execute that. Like, in the shooting archetype, my how is I'm probably not going to lay a lot of traps, right? I'm probably not going to use a lot of melee. But you tell you what, I've got, in Fortnite we have hundreds of guns, right? And it's like I've got 5 types of guns I really love to use. I'm going to make sure I have everything I need to be prepared to shoot stuff, right? Or the constructor, the same thing, the builder persona, right? They're thinking about, okay, is my scavenger getting me all of the materials that I need? Is my fort set up really, really well, right? Does everyone have their little perches where they can shoot from? And it's kind of like a slight twist on what really makes the core of Fortnite unique. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Something else that struck me when I played for Fortnite for the first time was that I had I felt like it took me a little bit too long to get to a point where I was building myself. And I know that is like, that sounds like the fussiest, like, plays too many video games like concept in the entire world. Like, I wasn't building my own fort for like 15 minutes. But
Right.
there is, there is a, small as it is, a barrier between that central hook and
Yeah.
a first time player. And
Yes.
really that fort building, comes into its own is most exciting when you're doing it with multiple people.
Right.
And how do you guys approach making sure that the first time that somebody is playing Fortnite, that they are going to have that experience of what it is like to be playing with a team of at least 4 people, right away? How do you make sure that that central hook, that building gets to people, and
Yeah.
they don't wash out just being like, oh, well, I'm going to hit rocks and collect materials, like, because that collect everything impulse is really hard to resist once you get into it. And yeah, so how do you make sure that people get to that building quickly?
Well, that's also been another big focus for us for the past few months. Our next online test is called "Getting Friends to Play Together Better," right? Like literally, that's what we're calling our next build.
There you go.
And in the version you played, it was like the earliest version of our onboard. It's what we called onboarding, right? When you're learning everything, and we're like, oh, okay, it's not really ready to show anyone, but it does teach you the mechanics. And so that was probably a mistake. Like, that's probably a mistake showing
That's
it.
probably not the best idea in the world.
Yeah, and so we knew it's not the final thing at all, but it did do a good job of actually teaching people how to interact, with their home base and like how to build stuff. And so we were like, it'll be better for people to have that than to have nothing,
Mm.
and just kind of get dropped into the game. But we are absolutely making sure, like you said, you nailed it, right? Like it's critical that people get to that core of what makes the game great as quickly as possible, and they do it with their friends, and that's like top of our list. Top of our list.
I know we were talking about sort of like the genesis of Fortnite, and you were talking about how like the team at Epic was like, oh, we want to make an emergent game. We want this thing that gives people hundreds of hours and all that. And I
Yeah.
find that so surprising because Epic's history is in things that are very simple and sort of sing because they are simple. Unreal is like in every iteration, all the way from the original to, something like Unreal 3 God, Unreal 3 was 7 years ago. Boy, do I feel old.
You
But,
feel old. Man, I started playing Unreal when I was 14, and
oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
working for this company. I know it still blows my mind like every day,
But,
every single day. Anyway, sorry.
so yeah, like, that history, Unreal is very simple. It's about speed. It's about, this very, very twitchy experience. And Gears of War is very much the same. Infinity Blade is very, very simple. And Fortnite is the exact opposite. Fortnite is all about complexity, and there is a simple core of fun. That building this little structure, especially with people, is a very simple concept, but the execution is incredibly complex. Knowing what it's going to take for you to gather the materials and be in a situation where like you can build like, a melee weapon like that, guitar, like purple weapons are legendary. Am I correct in remembering that? They're epic weapon. What are the purple
Yeah,
weapons?
people are epics. They're
Purple
the
or
epics.
epics. Yeah, like the purple epic guitar. Like
Hmm.
getting to that point is insanely difficult. So why was there a desire to make something that's so deeply complex?
So that's really speaking to, and it's something that we call this joy of discovery, right? It feels really good when you're learning a game, to feel like, wow, I just discovered something that was new, and I tried something out and it worked, and holy crap, I didn't know I could do this. The game didn't tell me,
Mm.
but this is awesome. And it really, it's something that some of the best games just do so well. It reels you in. It makes you feel so invested and like, yes, this game is awesome. Like the first time you uncover, right, that there was something that you didn't think you could possibly do. And that's the game that we're building with Fortnite around our core mechanics. That's what we think is part of what makes it so special. The core people who like to play this game, they like to craft and they like to discover and they like to see. They're like, what? There's this cave here. Where does it go? What does it do? And that's part of its charm, and I think that's part of what makes it fun.
Tanya, part of your job as a producer, if you're working for, a major studio and you're a producer, a lot of your job is knowing and understanding the market and the community that you're trying to address with your game. And
Hmm.
from your perspective, in your experience in the industry, why is it, do you think, that there seems to be a renewed interest in games that are complex and games that are demanding? Because, there was in the last console generation, when it was Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and Steam was really coming into its own,
Hmm.
the you know, the trend, especially in big budget game design, was to make things easier and easier and easier and easier. Make them simpler. Make something that is more or less going to play itself. And even Epic has a history in this. I'm not saying that Gears of War was, a game that mollycoddled people by any stretch of the imagination, but at the exact same time, taking things out like health, having like, regenerating health in Gears of War was a way of making that game far more simple and accessible for people. But
Hmm.
in it's my observation, and I think just looking at everything that's at E3 this year and Fortnite included, it seems that there is a drive back in the other direction. Games like Fortnite and others are much more demanding of time, of skill, of learning, and coming to grasp with complex mechanics. Why do you think that this is happening now?
So one thing I mean I do want to kind of clarify is I don't want to confuse complexity with depth.
I think that's a very, very. So there you go. Why don't we say deep games rather than
Yes.
complex games?
Because like at the end of the day, we want to build a deep game that doesn't feel complex, right? So like for your end game for like your end game player, they're like, "Holy cow, you can do this and this and this," right? And for them, it's okay that it's like they understand all of the pieces, but for your early player, they shouldn't feel like, "Oh God, I just got bombarded," right? And that's our challenge. Like that's the problem we have to solve. Like, and we have to solve it well while making a deep game, right?
Right.
So, but yeah, to answer your question, I think that gamers are showing that they want games that they can invest in. And I think that there's still plenty of room for a shorter or like a more immersive, like crazy sit down game experience. But for the game that we're building, we want people to be interested in coming back to the world of Fortnite and seeing how things have changed and really kind of growing with our game. And I can't speak to the industry and why they're going there, but I know that that's something that we've always wanted from the very beginning.
So we do have a couple of questions here
Yeah.
from the chat. They are all the questions that I am sure you have been asked 1 billion and 9 times over the course of E3. And the biggest one is, when are people going to get to play it? When is, the beta going up this fall? Is there any way to get earlier access to that? One person here in the chat is like, I've been signed up for the alpha for 4 years. And you are not alone in that, my
I'm
friend.
sorry. Sorry. So yeah, we're going into closed beta this fall. We are continuing to do our online tests leading up to that. So we're polling thousands of people from our sign up group. So I'm really sorry for those who haven't gotten in. We have I mean, it's a great problem to have. We have a lot of people who've signed up. We're just kind of getting to people as quickly as we can. So we're continuing that process through to this fall. And you can sign up if you haven't signed up yet. You can sign up at Fortnite.com and get on that list. So we should have some more information coming. I mean, this fall as far as like how people will be able to get in at that point. But that's the plan for now.
Handsome Kai has a question that I definitely find very interesting given my experience with the game, which is, how many characters will there be when launched, and can you share the types? When I was trying out Fortnite, the part that obsessive compulsive video game streak gets tweaked in about 1 billion different ways when you're playing Fortnite. Because as soon as I was like, wait, I need to open up new bases on my island to get new characters, and then I have to level up those bases to level up my characters. What? Oh my god! I need to do everything as soon as possible.
Yes.
Uh,
That's good. You're the type of person who should be playing Fortnite.
right.
You are my target
Tanya,
audience.
I readily admit it stressed me right the hell out. I was like, oh
Uh-huh.
god, what do the stars mean? But
Uh-huh.
so as I was going through, I was very, very excited when I unlocked a ninja, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna be the ninja. But a message popped up right away that says, oh, you can only be a dude ninja. The lady ninja is not ready and not
She's
available here.
She's coming. Yeah.
So what can you speak to the characters that are going to be in the game? In the final version, can we talk about types, etc.?
Totally. Well, there's actually this is another one of those things that we're in the process of making a lot better even than in the build that you saw. But the core of it is, so we currently have 4 classes, and then you have heroes that can play as those classes. So those two things are kind of they're not directly associated with each other. So the 4 classes that you can play as are your ninja, which is your, melee, quick moving combat class, and he's got things like shadow stance, like he can go transparent, and he's got a shield, and super fun. And then we've got our Outlander, which is our scavenging class, and our Outlander's abilities are they're one of our support classes. So they go out into the world, they can very quickly harvest lots of materials with their abilities. They find these orbs that they can use at any point for defense or offense. And you've got your constructor, which is your building archetype. Our builder has this great ability called the base. Well, I don't know if you saw it when you guys were playing, but if you place your base, however you've upgraded it, your fort will get the benefits of that base. So maybe the way you've upgraded it is that you want it to deal damage, or maybe you want it to spit out resources, or maybe you want it to heal, or give your base more HP, and it gets a passive benefit to the whole group. And then there's our commando, who's our ranged combat guy. So all about guns and bullets and being able to load more bullets and incendiary rounds and things like that.
Cool. Well, Tanya, thank you so much for spending your E3 morning with me. There's nothing harder, everybody watching, than Thursday of E3. I need to make this clear for everybody. Thursday is the day when everybody gets really punchy and start losing their minds, which
Wait,
is awesome.
that starts today? I thought that started a few days ago.
It
I'm
did,
like,
okay, touche. Yeah.
people around here being crazy.
Very, very good point, Tanya.
Yeah.
Tanya, thank you again. Everybody, Epic Games Fortnite be available in beta this fall. Tanya,
Yeah, thank you so much.
we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
This is great. Yeah, thanks so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye. And everybody who is still watching, that is not it for us by a damn sight. We are going to be streaming throughout the day with developers from E3. We're going to be talking to the wonderful people at Daedalic and looking at a really, really, really cool looking game by Mandragora team called Skyhill. Be back here in 1 hour. Click the follow button. You'll know when we go live. We'll be playing Skyhill. After that, we're going to be frickin' playing Elite Dangerous with none other than Elite creator David Braven of Frontier Developments. And after that, if you've seen that slick little stealth game for PlayStation 4 called Volume, we are going to be playing a feature-complete build of Volume here on the stream with Mike Bithell, the creator of that game. So follow us here. We'll be back in 1 hour. Thanks, everybody.